Welcome to Design, Build, and Deliver with Heart Companies, where we dive deep into the world of life science with leaders who decide, design, and deliver the next generation of pharma and biotech facilities. I'm your host, Samir Gondalia. Thanks for joining me as I interview visionary leaders shaping biotech and pharma facilities from C suite executives to project decision makers. Hear real stories, industry trends, and actionable insights to help you build your facilities and your career smarter, faster, and better. Let's continue with Design, Build, and Deliver with Heart Companies. My guest in this episode is George Skillin. George is VP of Strategy Services with Project Farma, a Perkin Elmer Company. George has over 35 years of biopharmaceutical experience in all aspects of manufacturing, including bulk active ingredient, biotech drug substance, aseptic processing and filling, and packaging and sterilization. He has spent roughly half of his career in the automation, integrated systems, and enterprising systems aspects of biopharma manufacturing, and the remaining time running large global engineering organizations, managing global capital budgets, and large-scale strategic capital projects. George has worked in these global roles across Merck, Wyeth, Pfizer, WuXi Biologics, Park Therapeutics, a Roche division, and Moderna before joining Project Farma. I have known George for many years and worked with him during our Pfizer days. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to him in this chat. Hope you do too. Here's George Skillin. Good morning, George. How are you doing today?
Great to see you. Doing great.
Thanks for joining us on Design, Build, and Deliver. And I'm very excited to talk to you about designing, building, and delivering life science facility projects. I know you've been doing this for over 4 decades. You have worked with and for some of the marquee names in our industry like Pfizer, Moderna, Spark. Tell us what one project or one thing that you learn about delivering a life science facility project with speed without sacrificing quality.
Okay. Without naming companies, most recent activity was delivering a new facility from a rough core and shell, through PPQ batches in about 18 to 24 months. I would
That's
say,
impressive.
the thing that makes a project like that work and allow you to attain that level of speed is very good planning, very good scheduling, very tight scheduling, and total involvement from all the cross-functional groups, with the facility engineering teams, the operational teams, getting the operational readiness teams involved very, very early so that the handoff from CQV to operational readiness goes very, very smoothly.
That is one thing that keeps coming up when I talk to people about delivering speed is that slow down to speed up. Don't rush. Make sure everything and everyone's on the same page at the beginning. Spend some time on the quality of your drawings, alignment. Everybody knows what needs to be done and when. And that the rush is to break ground and start building, and that part often gets overlooked.
Yes. And, the other big thing that if you're trying to attain speed is managing scope very tightly. Any changes, and there will always be changes, right? Things don't always go according to the design. There's problems that you hit in the field, et cetera. In this case, a building that we thought was brand new, core and shell, but it had numerous issues with the exterior construction that had taken place that we found we suddenly had to remediate, right? So again, getting in front of those, but you're always going to have those surprises, but trying to minimize the amount of change that comes to a big project is really important if you're trying to do it quickly.
Right. Now, if we look at it slightly differently, that if you want to deliver a project, life science facility project quickly without blowing up budget, is there a way to do it? And how would you recommend to do it without blowing up a budget? Because that's very easy, right? You can throw money at it, get more contractors, and get people to work 2-3 shifts. And you can
Yes.
always speed up. But is there a way to do it without blowing up budgets?
Yes. It always comes with trade-offs, right? So as I mentioned, you will have changes occur. Those changes usually cost, time and money. And and time is money on a big project. You've got,
Yes.
a labor force that is charging on an hourly basis, and so time is money. Again, much like watching the schedule tightly, watching the budget very, very tightly weekly
Hmm.
with monthly roll-ups to senior management, but and then identifying a very sharp change log of here are the changes that have come in, here's the cost of those, and then decisions. Are they absolutely a key priority to deliver the facility, or is it something that can be put on what we call a holdback list, and where that work would get done after the initial project is done,
Hmm.
maybe on a separate budget, right?
Right.
Again, to maintain the initial budget, which in the case of the project I'm referencing was paramount to maintaining the budget. We could not exceed the budgeted funds for the project.
So let me ask you the other way around. If you were given, you are running a life science facility capital project, and you are given 10% extra money. I know it doesn't happen, but you are given 10% extra money because of budget cycle or money freed up somewhere and they have to use it before the budget cycle is over. Currently, with everything else going on, where would you spend that extra money to speed up the project?
I would say because things always move, toward, what I call the funnel effect. Things always squeeze at the end of the project, right?
Right.
So a lot of that, if you had extra funds and you want to accelerate, I would put more labor towards CQV.
Hmm.
And, depending, not every company budgets operational readiness as part of the capital project. Sometimes that's done as a part of operational expenses. But those are the two areas that are the last in line before starting a PPQ batch. So if you really want to accelerate, and that's what I've found over the last number of years, is everyone's gotten pretty good at getting the hard field construction work done, and you can always apply overtime and work weekends to get that done as well. But the real push comes in the CQV and the operational readiness. So I would put the money there.
Yeah, that is so interesting because I worked in CQV for a while, and it was always that all the project delays always get pushed on CQV because the
Absolutely.
facility startup date doesn't change. That doesn't get pushed, right? Or
That's right.
if you have announced ribbon cutting ceremony for your GMP facility, that doesn't change. But let's say you had 6 months for CQV, but now you have 4 months, and you have 3 months, and all the project delays. CQV is what we used to say, CQV always gets left holding the bag for the final
Yes.
delivery of the project.
Yes, it's always bookended, and the last thing to go. I used to think, in my time in the automation and systems world, that was always on the critical path, and it often is getting to that point of commissioning and qualification. But the true, item that has to get done last is the CQV, and then, a lot of people, don't. I think more people are paying attention to it, but operational readiness is just as important. That's where the manufacturing teams need to develop all of their batch records and SOPs and do all the training of their
Mhm.
personnel, hire their personnel, and a whole laundry list of things that need to get done to make that facility operational. And that is sometimes overlooked by a lot of companies. It's an area that, again, if you do good planning and you get them involved and funded and moving, pretty much at the time of, even during construction, those teams need to be in place and starting to grow. And if you do that early enough, you'll have a recipe for success to achieve timelines.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue into my next question, which was op readiness. Building a GMP facility is one thing, but being ready to operate a GMP process is another. What is, and let's go into detail as much detail as you want to. What is something that life science facility leaders overlook when they think they are op ready, but they are not? You already alluded to some of it, SOP, training manual, and all those things. But if you can dig deeper, and maybe talk about in a bullet point list or however you want things
Yeah.
that get overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, it is it's in a whole area that has become more and more of a focus. So, yeah, as I mentioned, your typical operational things, batch records, SOPs, all of those need to be written and
Mhm.
reviewed and approved before you start into true manufacturing. Having the staff on board and trained, that's huge.
Mhm.
On the engineering side, having all of your spare parts identified, having all of the systems and equipment into a CMMS system with all of the initial calibration work done and any follow-up calibration needed. The frequencies of those calibrations need to be identified. Basically, that you have a fully operating facility. Quality plays big. You're going to have some lab and QA, QC testing, all those analytical methods that are needed need to be developed and validated. The equipment needs to be in place. Your, LIMS systems, testing of raw materials and in-process sampling, all of that has to be all done and ready and people able to execute that flawlessly from the start. And it just takes a lot of work and a lot of pre-planning to get all that together in parallel with bringing the facility online, getting it built, and getting it validated.
Yeah, so when I was in process development, manufacturing, we used to say that start talking about your drug product while you start talking about your drug substance, because the tendency was that, well, you work on your drug substance, and at some point in future, you start working on drug product. And I see some parallels here. You work to build your facility, build your GMP facility, and then you do op readiness. But what you're suggesting is they should almost be done parallel, even when the
There,
facility is not
yeah,
ready. Start talking about op readiness while you
yes.
are building your facility.
Yeah. I mean, in the case of this facility, we had ops readiness maybe at a very small level, maybe 2, 3, 4 people, but definitely the leader of that operational readiness group, which was headed by somebody from manufacturing, right?
Hmm.
Not on the engineering side, but the true end user manufacturing side. That's important because that's where the ultimate ownership is for the facility is with that manufacturing team, and they were involved even back in part of the design phase, right? So
Hmm.
the earlier you can start it, the better, because they learn the design, they have input on the design, but they understand the full scope of the facility at a very early stage. So they, as the project team is peaking at its high number of resources and then ramping down. That team is doing the exact opposite, but in parallel and ramping up until they're fully staffed to be a fully operating facility by the time you start true production.
Right. And yeah, it's very important to start early and having everything in place. So when you need it, you can just start your facility and don't have to worry about your facility equipment, documentation, people, and all that. George, you have been around for over 4 decades. The project management, how the life science facilities are built. I'm not even going to talk about 4 decades because things have changed in last 10 years. How we used to build a life science facility before and after COVID, if we just talk about last 10 years. What has changed? What things have changed when companies and senior leadership they approach building a new life science facilities? What are the bottlenecks and what's working to address those bottlenecks?
I think one thing that the industry's gotten much more, I would say, modular in its approach to
Hmm.
you know, do as much work outside of the facility as possible, right? And then bring things in, prefabricated. So all your various skids and other equipment, utility packages, all of that, anything you can do to build it off site and even do your FATs, et cetera, and then bring it into the building and make final connections versus,
Right.
brute force, piping runs. You'll have much of that to do for sure in any facility. Having as much done outside of the facility as possible, again, brings all sorts of advantages. You get lots of work done again in parallel.
Mhm.
That's the key. You when you want to try to do something fast, you're forced to do multiple things in parallel that
Right.
you would normally do in a more start to finish, type, and then, finish to start type logic in a project schedule. You want to do as much in parallel as you can without having people trip over one another or do something,
Right.
out of order, so to speak, right? But that's the goal is, make things squish it together as much as possible. And again, as you said at the beginning, without compromising quality as well,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Quality is
yeah,
not optional in our
yeah,
industry.
yeah.
Compliance is not optional.
And then another bottleneck, but it all gets into the whole topic of managing change is any new facility, typically it's for a new product that a company may have, and you have a whole nother arm of the company called, which you are very familiar with, Samir, the process development side
Yes.
of the fence, right? And who are continuing to hone the process because you've done a design and that's what's being built, but that doesn't stop process development from continuing to enhance and even potentially modify the process, right? And
Right.
so that brings changes, and again, trying to manage that and, do it in a way that doesn't upset the flow and upset the apple cart, so to speak, is important as well, right? But that
Right.
that can cause a lot of problems if there's a lot of change from process development, right?
Yeah. I have a question about process development, follow-up question. But before I ask that question, I want to add one more thing to what you just said about bottlenecks. I'm not sure if you noticed, but I see in our industry, the life science companies, they want to source the skills and equipment locally. That is, so if they're building facility in, say, Boston, they want to hire tradesmen and skilled people and all the design people from Boston. That's one change I have noticed. Like 10 years ago, when we used to build project, we used to build project in China, and you are getting UF kit from Sweden and centrifuge from Germany, and you had CQV people from Italy, and we had analytical in Canada, and you have worked on these projects. I see more and more where they want local people, not just in same, it's not even like supply chain or the international skill set or people, but just local, like New England, stay in New England. Now obviously they will go out, but given a choice, they want easy access. They just want to be able to
Yes.
drive to their vendor and have a conversation rather than waiting back and forth by emails for any
Right.
question answers.
Yep, yep. No, and I think you're right, and it's obviously preferred. I think we'll see as things pick up with all of this onshoring work that is occurring in the U.S. I think an example is North Carolina right now is, I think, very taxed
Yes.
in terms of its resource base locally, and so
Right.
you're then faced with the additional cost of bringing people in, even just laborers, right? People
Mhm.
that do, as an example, sanitary piping, right? Those
Right.
resources are probably being taxed down in North Carolina. And so you got to be conscious of what is that additional cost it's going to do to bring it in if you don't have it locally, right?
Right. No, North Carolina is a really good example because 10 years ago, we knew people who used to fly in North Carolina, do work, stay there for 2 months, 3 months, then come back. But now they have a really thriving ecosystem for life science companies. They don't need to go anywhere. They can find all the
Yeah.
talent in
Yes.
Raleigh
Yeah.
and other areas. So
Yeah.
that's a really good example about sourcing locally.
Yeah. But so you think of some of the new builds that are going to be happening. If you look at some of the locations, there's some out in, fairly rural parts of Virginia. There's some work, companies are doing down in Houston, not a big
Mhm.
life sciences hub, but a big chemical hub. So probably lots of talent, but, in terms of doing pharmaceutical facilities, maybe not as, experienced as other regions. So it'll be interesting to see how it all comes together, right?
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned something interesting about process development. So going from process development to big GMP facility, it's one thing to develop a process in 1 liter bioreactor on a bench, but to translate that process into a GMP facility with 6,000 liter bioreactor is a different thing. What are the challenges, and how are companies using new technology and resources to make that transition? Because it's not taking as much time and money as it used to not too long ago.
Yeah, I I think, I mean, you might be able to help me here, but the process development, what they tend to do is, I'm sure there's some that just go right from small scale and into a manufacturing facility, but I think they try to do more and more testing at scale in
Hmm.
process development these days, right? So that they can work those bugs out, those scale up issues. And the other interesting thing is that a lot of the newer facilities, gene therapy, the CAR T facilities, mRNA facilities,
Right.
It is actually fairly small scale, so that's an advantage that we
Yeah.
haven't had in the and that's a big change. Things have gotten smaller in
Hmm.
those areas. I mean, the days you don't hear many projects these days of, 20,000-liter bioreactors, right? Stainless steel bioreactors. These are much smaller and disposable, and I think it makes that transition easier
Hmm.
for the process development people because they can do it at scale
Right.
in a smaller space. They don't need a huge pilot lab to do that type of work.
I also hear a lot about digital twins. When you go to conferences, they talk about digital twins. It's very difficult to model a whole bioreactor or a whole system in the beginning. But once you do that, you can run that simulation over and over again without costing much. You don't really need to run it. You can just run it in a few minutes, if not few hours, right? So
Yep,
that's one thing that way they are accelerating that.
yep.
Now, George, AI is everywhere. Everybody's talking about AI, AI. And how do you see it changing validation and commissioning in next few years? Because I like AI. I am very optimistic about AI's potential to do good. But for the life science industry, is it really going to have any positive impact on productivity and efficiency? Or is it just a fancy tool that you talk about every quarter?
Yes. I mean, and I've been to a number of conferences throughout the fall, and the big theme is all things AI. And
Right.
it is, I find it, very aspirational and visionary, and it all is great. I'm very optimistic as well. What I haven't seen is real world examples that, have brought, that are really driving significant efficiencies. I think it could do that, like you said, in the validation space. And we, Project Pharma, we are investing in AI tools that will, my vision is, if you had a validation master plan and you run that through some AI software and it is able to look at all the drawing sets from the engineering firm and all the points and instrumentation out there and create IQ, OQ, PQ protocols, maybe to a 95% level of completion, that would be huge in terms
Hmm.
of time saving, all that upfront writing, of those documents and protocols. But I think we're a long way from it. I have not seen anything that comes remotely close to doing that yet. So I think time will tell, and I think it's very early days. And I think if the
Right.
other thing that there was a lot of discussion about AI and, decision making and all that. And, someone told me, and it was a great point that, with if you ask Chat GPT something every 5 minutes, you'll get a different answer because in our industry, you want repeatability, you want
Okay.
consistency. So how do those two play with one another? And that,
Right.
some pretty senior quality people said that they have to look at AI, something that is used to inform people but not be making full on decisions based on AI
Right.
at this point. Again, I think we're very, very, very early days and just trying to understand, what is AI? People use the term so broadly. So
Right.
what is it? Is it what software package is it? Is it multiple software packages? Is it custom code that people write to do a certain task? For me, it's very interesting. No one gets to that level of detail in any of these
Right.
discussions. It's all very high level, and everything is just talked about as AI will do this.
Yeah.
So I think we have a long way to go.
Yeah, no, I'll second a couple of things you said. That number, I want to see more case studies, right? Like just show me how much money, how much time, how much efforts it saved. And I'm sure there are examples out there, but we haven't seen good representations. And the second thing is that other problem with AI is that AI takes the data on internet, what is available, right, and then it uses that as raw data to give you the information. The problem is that for last 3 years, AI is not accurate. We know that. It's not accurate. It's called it hallucinating or whatever. It's not accurate. So it spits out a lot of that information, then it consumes it, and then it gives you wrong information again. It goes back on unit. You know what I mean? So it accentuates the inaccuracy of the original information. So that's the other
Right.
problem. And we can't have that in our industry.
No.
So that's where we are. I think we are going to be the last adopters of AI. We will
Yeah.
adopt it when we won't have any other option. That's when we'll adopt AI.
Yes, yes. Because at this stage, you're looking again for repeatability of a process, repeatability of, let's say, a validation test, and consistency, right? And those things, they're kind of diametrically opposed with what you just said in terms of how AI works, right? So, that's where, I mean, again, a lot of the big words I heard from quality was in manufacturing, we'll use it to inform, but people, humans,
Right,
will still need to make decisions, right?
right.
So, yeah.
Now, looking ahead to 2026, let's talk about life science facility building, design, delivery. What trends excite you the most about uh, future life science facilities?
Good question. I think for 26, the next 3 years are going to be very, very busy in the industry. And probably, I think we're going to have a talent shortage in terms. So I think that brings all sorts of, so hopefully that brings a lot of new young people into the
Mhm.
industry and allows a lot of good training to take place and bring new people along. But I think we could hit some true talent shortage here if all of this investment actually materializes.
Yes.
It's going to really tap out the capabilities of the US to do all this work. So maybe we have to do things have been done in the past, but hone, nearshoring or offshoring capabilities, right? So it'll be an interesting test, but I think that's going to be a big challenge is the number of resources that we have available and skilled resources to do all this work. It's going to take quite a bit of doing.
Yeah, absolutely. When I tell my friends and who are our friends in our industry who've been laid off, and I say, well, there is a shortage of skilled resources in our industry, they don't believe it. And I said, no, there are people, there have been lots of layoff and all that. But there is a shortage. When there is a position, companies are struggling to find the right person with the right skill set to fit for a certain role. The second thing is that a lot of investment, if you see in our industry, life science industry in this country, huge investments are being made in places which are not necessarily known for life science talent pool,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, you make $5 billion facility. That's great, but you're gonna need people. So either you need to find significant chunk of people who are willing to move there and help do that. It's been done before, but it takes a little time. Or the companies will need to have their very effective training programs, which we don't see anymore. The companies don't have training programs anymore, used to 20, 25 years ago. But I think we'll see that trend coming back. You have these people, you want to train them properly because you can't make mistakes in GMP. That's one risk I do see. You can throw money at it, but you still need people to run those fancy buildings.
Yes. Yep. And I think, pharma companies have been doing it for, at this point, decades. I mean, pharmaceutical companies in the past had their own engineering groups. They did all their own design, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. So over time, all of that, those groups internally continue to get smaller.
Right.
And therefore the shift has to move out to the service organizations and e-firms and, consultancies to do that work for the client because they don't have the people anymore. Again, it probably is a great opportunity for different service organizations, with all this work coming at them, to grow and add resources because the pharma companies are they don't have the staffs that they used to be able to manage this volume of work.
Right, right. And training too, right? You just mentioned that there used to be separate training departments. When we work for companies not too long ago, you used to have trainer and you have quality people and you have new person and you wouldn't see that person for a month because that person
Yes.
is in training, getting trained on SOPs and
Yes.
compliance and all that stuff. Now, when you have a new person joining, here's your email address, here's your laptop, and this is a meeting, start calling in, and this is the project deck, right? So the training department, training period, they don't exist. But I think we'll have to start doing that. So George, now let's talk about you. What are some of your favorite books, TV shows, movies that you've been reading, watching, exploring these days?
In terms of books, I don't get the opportunity to read as much as I would like to. But in terms of shows, I do like to, relax. Many of the various shows on Netflix in terms of more sort of action mystery type programs. Things like I guess a good one of late was Black Rabbit, with Jason Bateman, from a very Ozark like series. But I like sort of binge watching through a 8 or 10 episode series on Netflix to relax, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. And then lots of outdoor activities. So golf, tennis, skiing, snowmobiling, all sorts of things outdoors, right?
Well, you live in Maine, so you get plenty of opportunity to do all that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And the thing about binge watching is that it's interesting how we have been programmed that we don't have time to watch a 3-hour movie because it's too long, but we have time to watch 8 1-hour episodes, right?
That's right. Exactly. And that's usually how I do it. I don't do it all at once. I do it, sometimes we'll do 2 shows in a night, 2 episodes, but typically 1 episode a night. And then 8 days later, we're done. Right. So,
Right, right,
yeah.
right. If you were to give a TED talk on a subject outside of life science, what subject would you choose to give a TED talk on?
Boy, head talk on something outside of the industry.
Yes, outside of your evening weekend passion, something outside
Oh,
of your core
my goodness.
competency.
I have no idea. I wouldn't be able to give it, but I would certainly be interested in hearing, how to improve your golf game, right? Would be, and I don't know if that fits into a TED talk, but so that would be something I would be interested in hearing more of as I try to lower my handicap. I was able to get out quite a bit this past year and did bring it down, but not to the level that I thought I would by playing way more golf than ever before, right? So
A good TED topic on golf would be the grip golf has on the mind of golfers to convince them that they are not good enough. There is always room to learn.
that's true. And that's
I still have to meet a golfer and he said, "Oh, I'm a real good." Like I meet people like you who've been playing golf for 40 years, 30 years, and they're still not satisfied with a golf
yeah.
game, right?
So
And
maybe that's the TED Talk. It's more psychological. Is
right,
because talk about anybody, right? Whether
right.
you're even a two handicap, there you will look at the pros. They're never satisfied.
Yeah,
They make a beautiful shot that's 10 feet away, and they shake their head in anger that they weren't 2 feet away, right?
right, right.
So how do you condition your mind to be constantly disappointed with your
Right.
performance, right?
Yeah, I think I
So,
said that'd be a great topic for TED Talk. Like
yeah.
the grip golf has on golfers' mind, because you don't see anywhere else. You play tennis, you don't feel need to be a better tennis player,
Yeah,
right?
no, well, you do. Again, there it's different. You know that I think if people may have seen Roger Federer speaking at commencement at Harvard or
Yeah,
whatever, but he made, you're going to fail a lot. As successful as he only won 51% of his
right,
total points. But
right,
the key was that's 51% versus 49%. And those important points are the ones that he won, right?
right,
So having the focus, the mindset, the ability to shake off other bad shots and focus on when it really is important is what made him great, right? So,
right.
yeah.
If someone wants to get in touch with you to know more about you or know more about Project Pharma, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm available by, phone, but email. So, George Skillin, no dot, just George Skillin at projectpharma.com would be great. And yeah, we are growing consultancy, doing more and more owners project management type work, heavy focus in the CQV world and operational readiness world, but getting involved in the upfront planning stages and managing large capital projects, from inception all the way through handover to manufacturing.
Yep, you guys will be very busy. Our industry, I think it stopped going down. It's plateau and now it's picking up, right? A lot of investment and a lot
Yes.
of optimism in our industry. So we do need people who can design, build, and deliver GMP facilities like
Yeah.
you and your colleagues at Project Farma. So, George, this has been a very interesting, very fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for your time and sharing everything that you did with us today.
Yes. No, thank you, Samir, for the opportunity, and great to see you.
Yeah, always a pleasure to talk to you, George. You have a nice day.
All right. You too.
Thanks for joining us on Design, Build, and Deliver with Heart Companies, where we explore the people, projects, and ideas shaping the future of life science facilities. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss upcoming episodes with more leaders from across the biotech and pharma world. To learn more about Heart Companies, our integrated design, engineering, and passivation services, visit heartcompanies.com, that is HART companies.com, or connect with us on LinkedIn. I'm Samir Gondalia. On behalf of everyone at Heart, thanks for listening. Until next time, build with purpose, deliver with pride.